Hi, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Dispelled. In this podcast, we are going to dispel myths, rumors, and lies that are about our history, our Constitution, and what's in the news today. Today, on my first episode, my guest is Chris Thomas. He is my TikTok buddy, nephew, son, whatever. We're family on TikTok, right, Chris?
I'm
So,
your
welcome
I'm
to
your
the
second
show.
favorite. Second favorite
You're
family member.
second after Nicole, yeah, but well, you did tell me I looked young, so that's all you got to do. I'm pretty easy. So the first myth, Chris, I'm going to ask you if you know about this, and this is something you hear all the time. Chris, does the Constitution say that Black people are 3/5 of a human being? Yes or no?
Well, the five liberal neighbors I have, they call me every morning and they say it to me. So, um, and they have degrees in social justice. So I kind of have to defer to
Oh,
them a little
in
bit.
social justice. Wow. Well, that's like a degree saying that's not fair. So I'm going to tell you what you can share that is actually truthful with your liberal neighbors. And that is the Constitution doesn't say that. As a matter of fact, our entire Constitution doesn't speak to Black or white people. It speaks to free and not free. And keep in mind, at that time, there were indentured servants in our country.
Hmm.
There were slaves. There were also slaves who were white people in the South, although few and far between, but who had committed a crime against a family and they were enslaved to that family. So the Constitution doesn't speak to race. It also doesn't speak to gender, male or female. It speaks to free and unfree in mankind. So what does the Constitution actually say? Well, it says that for the purposes of the census, non-free people will be counted as 3/5 of a person. What that means is that Black Americans who were citizens at the time the Constitution was ratified, everybody who here was, right, were actually counted as whole people. And there were roughly, depending on who you read, 50 to 60,000 free Black Americans at the time of the ratification of the Constitution.
And mind you, we had a much smaller population back then. So 50 to
Two
sixty
and a half
thousand.
million people.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that doesn't sound like a lot now, but
It was a
absolutely.
lot then. And also keep in mind by 1830, we had over 300,000 free Black citizens. And that was 1830 was the year that the last northern state abolished slavery. So again, so people are going to ask, I'm assuming your liberal neighbors are going to be, then why did they say that? So I'll tell you why. When they came to the Constitution at the time, when they were dividing up representative for the states, the South was like, oh no, we want all our slaves counted as people. And the North was like, yeah, then you will have entire political control of this new country because that ramps up your population. And the North said, if you're going to do that, then we're going to tax you as those are whole people. And the South said, oh no, we can't afford that. So the 3/5 compromise was offered that allowed the South to have representation limited by the number of citizens they had, free people, and only a percentage of people that were enslaved. And it also, they had to pay taxes, but they didn't have to pay taxes on a non free person because that person didn't monetarily, and it's strictly say monetarily because they did contribute in production to taxes being paid in the South. So again, it's important to note our founding fathers never said that a particular race was 3/4 or less of a human being. And on a side note, while I was researching this, I found out that free Black citizens at the time had the right to vote as long as they were men. So 10 out of the 13 colonies, because voting is controlled by the states, allowed free Black citizens to vote. So as long as they contributed in taxes, which was the big decider for voting back then. Any questions on that? Did I clear it up? Are there any more myths? But just know our founding fathers and our Constitution doesn't say that.
So really what you're getting at is this habit of the left to take
Mm-hmm.
anything that even remotely involves race and then make it, and then in the narrative they tell has to become only about race and nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
That they try
Right.
to make it fit. It has to fit.
Right.
If
And this is
something
one of the biggest.
if something affects or affected some black people or even most black people, it means it was about black people and black people alone in their minds.
Exactly. Right. And again, The Constitution does not. The first time race, and even then it doesn't speak to race, is when we get down to after the Civil War and we added amendments where we specifically freed people. But again, then it speaks to free and unfree. So
Totally.
I think, and to me, this is an important point. I talked to my nephew about this, who is a Black young man. Is it's important for him to know you are a citizen of the United States. We did not think of you as less. Granted, we have a horrible and shameful history with slavery, but at the time, we did not say that makes you less of a human being for the purposes of being a human being, because if you're free, you're equal, you have the same protections as everybody else. But this is for the census, purpose of a census. Because one of the things he always told me is I never felt like America was my home because they didn't really consider me ever a human being. So we sat down, and this is what got me into as we started reading the Constitution, and he was really surprised. He was like, "Oh, I didn't know that there were free Black citizens who had rights and who voted and who paid taxes." And that's true, and that's part of our history along with slavery. You can't
Well,
teach one side of it and not teach the other.
and you mentioned on my show as well that it's totally valid and true for somebody to
Mhm.
say we as a country didn't live up to what was in the Constitution. I think you put it even
Oh
better
yeah,
than I
yeah.
put it.
Yes, our founding fathers who owned slaves, Washington, Jefferson, some of the big absolute hypocrites about it. To write,
Absolutely.
we believe all men are created equal, and to own slaves is hypocrisy. It is.
Exactly.
But it
But
doesn't change the truth of the statement. All men are created equal. Just because they
exactly.
didn't live up to it doesn't mean the statement's not true. That
We can
statement
look
is
we
true.
can look back in history and we can critique validly the decisions,
Mhm.
the moral decisions that people made, but we don't throw out the Constitution because of that, because those truths are self-evident.
There exactly. And so my thing is just because the founding fathers failed and generations afterwards have
Absolutely.
continued to fail doesn't mean that the belief that all men are created equal, all men deserve justice, all men deserve freedom, those things aren't wrong. I mean, because that's what you're saying. So, a broke clock is right twice a day. So even a liar can tell the truth. And in when I look at this, I think, yeah, our founding fathers were hypocrites. They failed. The generations after them failed. But what they wrote is true and is something that we should strive to live up to.
Well, actually, it was interesting. Bill Maher said something about this in one of his routines that anybody who's progressive today will be considered conservative and outdated 100 years from now. So it's silly to kind of do these, pissing
Yeah.
contests about who's more progressive than anybody else because we're all going to be primitive in 500 years.
Yeah.
Even the most progressive people. It's
Yep.
interesting. Like I think, what I think is going to happen is we're going to look back because the left flank is always kind of rewriting history to make it, like we said, all about race or all about sexual orientation or
Mhm.
whatever. They're going to look back in 100 years, I think, and they're going to say, there is a disproportionate number of Black inmates, therefore prisons were for Black people. We're going to see them say that.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
not true. I
right.
when I look at our justice system, like when you say that, I look at it and say our justice system is corrupt, not just because they have a disproportionate amount of Black people, but because if you pay attention at all to the Innocence Project, you watch any documentaries, you read any stories, you know that our justice system is corrupt against everyone, and poor people, which disproportionately can affect minorities in particular. So, but you're right. You look at it and say, well, it's racist. But if you dig into it, is there another example? And I think you're right. In 100 years, that'll be the story, but
So
it won't be the true story.
anybody who's watching this digging it up in a time capsule, the
Yes,
prison system was not built just to imprison Black people. I
it was
I
not.
know your woke blue-haired history teacher is going to tell you that, but you heard it here
But
on this podcast.
it's 100% not true. The problem is our government doesn't like to police itself. And so, therefore, when you have corrupt people as district attorneys or as mayors or governors, nobody wants to say anything because they don't want anybody looking at them. That's really our problem is we need to clean up our justice system. But in a
Absolutely.
100 years, that's not what'll be said. It'll be, like you said, blue-haired people getting upset. So, because
Absolutely.
they were built as
I
prisons.
mean, it's already happening now, so imagine
Yeah,
what it'll be.
exactly. We're already saying that now. Why? What's the truth got to do with it? Any other questions on the Constitution? So if you have to argue with your liberal neighbors, I mean, they won't believe anything you say. I'm 100% sure of that. But I mean, you are white
If any
supremacist
of my they them neighbors have any more questions, I'll be sure to write in and you can answer them next
to
time.
send it. Yeah. Well, we know you're a white supremacist this week, so I'm not sure they want to talk to you, but we'll see. All right, let's move on to our next topic. So I'm going to ask you another question, Chris. I hope you studied up for this. Are Republicans passing laws to marry off 12-year-olds?
Well, I think my wife is 13.
Okay,
So
so you
I
have
don't
an
know
age.
about
You have an
12.
age group.
I'm not sure about 12. The cutoff might be more like 13 or 14, but I'd love to hear the truth.
Okay, well, let me dispel this ever-present myth on TikTok and everywhere else. So absurd. So there have been changes in the marriage laws quite a bit. Usually, marriage is pretty steady. And again, based on the 14th Amendment, and our Constitution, states define their own marriage laws and then recognize other states. This is one of the things that came up with gay marriage is some states recognized it, some didn't. What did that mean when you moved? Now all states do. Yay, that's a good thing. So the short answer is no. Republicans are not passing laws to marry off children. I know you're shocked. You and Nicole may have to get divorced or wait till she's 14 and move to Hawaii.
I'll call my lawyer after the show.
Yeah, call your. I hope you got a prenup from a 13-year-old. So we had a couple of laws change. I'll run through them super quick, and I've done this quite a few times, but I'm going to share it here. Tennessee is the big one everybody talks about, right? Oh, Tennessee's letting 12-year-olds get married. Oh, it's all Republican. So that's true. In Tennessee, there is a super majority of Republicans. Absolutely, they control the House and the Senate. What happened there was a guy wanted to institute common law marriage, which is when you live together and the state says after this long we consider you married, whether you consider yourself married or not, right? And he assumed, which you can do, that this would be covered under Tennessee's current age system, which is 17 with your parents' consent. You can't get married under 17. He sent it to the Senate, and the Senate said, hey, the Republican Senate said, hey, somebody might see this as a loophole. You need to make sure that this bill acknowledges we have age restrictions. Went back to the House changed it, and they put it through. Nobody in Tennessee who is 12 can get married. No Republican tried to let anybody in Tennessee who is 12 get married. That never even came up except in crazy headlines that people put out.
So
Because
are
it
you
came up
trying to
in
tell hold on though. Are you trying to tell me that on the last dating profile I had for on eHarmony, when I had
Mhm.
my settings set for age 12 to 25, that was a fruitless endeavor? Is that what you're trying to
That
tell
was
me?
in Tennessee for sure.
Okay.
It was a fruitless.
No
There are
wonder.
some
No
states.
wonder.
No wonder you weren't getting any of the younger. Now there's some states that might work, and I'll tell you about those in a minute. But they're not Republican states. So next state up that everybody loves to talk about, Wyoming. Again, super majority. There are only 7 Democrats between the House and Senate in Wyoming. And also, I'll just do a shout out to Wyoming. Our Republican leader there of the House is an openly gay man who has only ever been a Republican, ran as a Republican, and was elected by a strong majority and supported there as a Republican. I know the Republicans don't like diversity, but I just wanted to point out we do have a little bit in Wyoming, which is an uber conservative state, as
Absolutely.
evidenced by ballots there. Anyway, this gentleman wrote a bill that raised the marriage age in Wyoming to 18, no underage marriage. And one clown, well, I won't even call him a clown. One guy stood up and said, hey, is
No,
this a violation?
by the way, say bozo, not clown.
Bozo.
Okay, there you
Well,
go.
that's your word, but if you'll let me use it. One bozo stood up and said, hey, are we overstepping with parental rights? If a parent says a 16-year-old can get married, should we stop them? And the Republican controlled House and Senate said, yeah, we should. 16-year-olds shouldn't get married. And the Republican House, the Republican Senate, and the Republican governor all passed that bill. So there is no underage marriage in Wyoming anymore, thanks to Republicans. So there you go. So don't, Wyoming is not your state, Chris. If you're, I don't know if you guys have, the open you could sister wife thing going on, but Wyoming is not your state for your
Gotcha.
eHarmony profile. Another state you'll want to stay out of is West Virginia. So West Virginia had very young marriage laws. I think it was 14. Now there's no supermajority there, but Democrats and Republicans came together and they raised the age to 16 and 17 with parental consent. It was a Democrat bill, which doesn't really matter. I think the age should have been raised. It went through and it's been passed. So there you go. Now you may want to look at Missouri. Missouri's age for marriage is 14 with parental consent, which is a little young. Now, why they haven't changed their marriage laws, but why everybody's going to bring this up is there's this idiot Mike Moon, and he is a Republican, and somebody asked him about the marriage laws, and he said, I know some 12-year-olds have been married. They seem happy to me. So, one, we need to stop Mike Moon from talking. Two, we need to find a younger, more in tune Republican to replace him. And three, Missouri has not changed the laws, but it's still at 14, Chris. So you have that option.
All right.
What is
I'm writing this down.
Write it down. I know you want to take notes. What I find interesting, and you may be curious about, is what states allow underage marriage and have no interest in changing their laws? Would you like to take a guess?
I actually genuinely don't know, but I'm going to guess California.
You are correct, sir.
I think everything depraved comes out of California, so that's why I'm guessing it.
So California's law is as long as your parents sign, California will give one parent signs, California will give you a marriage license. They actually don't call out an age in the marriage law. It just says a minor with parental consent.
Well, they probably love single parents so they can pander to them and give them free handouts too. So
exactly, yeah, why not? And considering that California is a big trafficking state because it's a border state, I would think this was something they'd really want to crack down on. But apparently not. They had a law introduced to the state house 5 years ago, and they've never voted on it. That law would end child marriage in California. It would end underage marriage. Unfortunately, California is too busy legalizing crime to actually make it illegal to marry a child. So,
by the way, legalizing crime is my new favorite phrase. Thank you.
They're legalizing crime, so it's no longer a crime. That's why their crime numbers aren't bad. So what was explained to me, just so you know, I want to give a different perspective here. What was explained to me was that saying people can steal up to, I think it's $750 without being arrested or prosecuted, it's not legalizing crime, right? It's helping the oppressed. So the people
and
who are stealing,
here's where you see the racism of the left, because they're assuming the people committing the crimes must be the minorities. There's a presupposition there. So I want to call that out too.
Yes. Well, they're oppressed, and this is the way the state has chosen to help them. And I'm like, what about the people who are also oppressed, who are being stolen from? Are we not concerned about them? Okay. So anyway, that's just another perspective. It's not legalizing crime. It's helping the oppressed by helping them take things that don't belong to them, that may possibly belong to other oppressed people. I don't know.
But screw them, right?
Yeah. Hey, they've got things that can be taken. Okay. Clearly they're not that oppressed. But yeah, California might be a state, if you're looking to expand your young sister wife clan, California might be a place to go. There's another state.
I was looking for a place to shoot up fentanyl without consequence. So I could do two things in one.
Exactly. You pack up a tent and you're set. You could just add tents to it. And
I'm pretty sure everybody there lives in a tent in the street. I think that's most of the population at this point. So,
considering you can't sell a house there because you have tents all around it, yeah, that's pretty.
So this is my place. This is my paradise. I'm gonna take note.
If you're an outdoor person, that's the place for you, right? That's the place you want to go. So, I mean, I would not be upset at all if I had spent $1 million on a townhome and now I could not sell it because Skid Row was now in my front yard, which is legitimately happening to people.
Yes.
I would not be upset at all about that.
Yes.
So, yeah, Tent City. Now, there is another state that is okay with child marriage. Would you like to take a guess which state that is? It's another state where you
Okay.
can shoot up fentanyl with no problem.
Okay, I want to say possibly not Massachusetts, is it?
No, Washington State.
I knew Washington State was doing some effed up stuff, so that doesn't shock me. So go ahead.
So Washington State, well, I mean, they give out there's drugs are legal there, and in high school, just so you know, to combat the drug problem, they have started giving out oh, I can't remember what the antidote is, but whatever you take to not die of an overdose of fentanyl, they now
Right.
give
Yeah,
it
I
to
know what you're talking about.
teenagers and ask, yeah, they now give it to teenagers and ask them to carry it around. So that's a bonus in that state. But also Washington State decided they had a law that went into the House to ban child marriage, but that was not a priority for them because, again, we had to make sure we were taking care of fentanyl deaths before we took care of children. So Washington State may be another option for you. Yeah. And both of those, I'd just like to point out, not run by Republicans. So not only are Republicans voting to end child marriage, they are not in states where people are ignoring child marriages. Now, if you want to know just for fun, there are 4 states that do allow you to get married at the age of 14, which I personally think is a little young, but I'm not going to criticize your cult religion that you're trying to start with, whatever you got going on there. I'm an open-minded conservative. That would be Hawaii, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Missouri. 2 of those are blue. One is kind of purple, New
Yeah.
Hampshire,
Hmm.
and the other one's red. So there is no, I keep getting on TikTok and others telling me, why are all Republicans, why in all red states are they marrying off children? So they're not. I've just given you the facts. You can go and look. And honestly, I think California is one of the bigger offenders. The fact that you are a trafficking state and you have neglected to do anything
Yeah.
to stop to stop this. They don't have a high rate of child marriage, but I wonder if that's going to go up as other states become more strict. So we'll see.
Very possible.
Yeah, there you go. So, any questions on now that you know where you're going to move? You and Nicole can pack up your tents, your fentanyl, your outdoor bathrooms, all the things you need for
I was just
California.
planning to go in the streets of LA.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's illegal for them to touch your stuff once you put it on the sidewalk.
I
So,
meant I meant go to the bathroom in the streets of LA. I wasn't gonna pack a
oh,
bathroom to.
well, you don't have to. I just didn't know if, if that was, I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to walk around with a roll of toilet paper or just snatch a shirt off of a homeless guy. Either one will fly in Los Angeles, which, yeah, I visited Los Angeles a few years ago. Wow. And people are like, it's like that everywhere. No, no, it's not. It
I
is
mean, I
not like
used
all
to. So I went on a business trip to San Diego
Mhm.
back in what month was this in? Back in September. It was September of last year. So I guess 8 months ago ish. But it was bad, and I live right near. I'm a train ride from New York City, and so I've been to New York City
Mhm.
a lot. And anybody who
Mhm.
would try to tell you that it's the same as New York City is lying. And New York City's pretty bad, but this was
Yeah.
another level. Downtown San Diego was another level.
I worked in San Francisco for 6 months a few years ago on a contract, and I was astounded. I was like, well, no wonder you hear people in California talk about the debt, the wealth gap, because I've never seen a wealth gap like I saw in Los Angeles and San Francisco, right? I
We
just,
also do we also want to talk about how Gavin Newsom's in-laws moved to Florida? I don't know if
he
you knew
just,
that.
he hates Florida and DeSantis
I know
so
it's very
much.
funny, and I'm pretty sure you'll have to fact check me on this because but I did read. I don't want to spread misinformation, so everybody who's listening, fact check this. I'm
All
pretty
about
sure that his in-laws that moved to Florida, possibly contributed to DeSantis's 2022 campaign as well. So they're actually DeSantis supporters. You'll have to check me on that, but I did read
I
it.
will tell you, yes, I will tell you.
But I
Yeah,
but by the
Gavin.
way, but I'm conservative, so I got all my news from Infowars. Alex Jones said it, and
Okay, well,
that's my
that's
only
way
that,
more credible than Fox News.
that's my only that's my only source of truth. So, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, because
That's not
I'm getting a chip implanted so I can just have Fox News and InfoWars streamed into my head so I can continue to be brainwashed and, only
yeah,
think about what they tell me. So,
right.
yeah,
But I did hear that. Check it out. I don't know if you knew that
I
or not.
I'm gonna fact check. Just the fact they moved to Florida is enough for me because Gavin Newsom hates Florida,
Yes.
and to me, I see that. I think he thinks of DeSantis as his older brother who took his girlfriend because
Yes.
DeSantis
Oh,
is running for
100%.
president and Newsom is not, and he feels like he should be. So
100%.
to me, that's what because he just hates DeSantis so much, and I'm like. I mean, there's some issues I have with DeSantis, but I'm like, you don't live here, Gavin. Why are you worried about Florida? We don't want you
Yeah,
here.
I've never seen somebody so preoccupied with something that has nothing to do with them. It's very funny.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, I mean, honestly, it's almost like the Mean Girl thing, where like he's mad because DeSantis is the most popular cheerleader or something. I mean, he's really just has a thing, and I'm like when he came to Florida, I was like, what are you doing here? Nobody wants you here, and you're coming to criticize DeSantis, who's a popular Florida and governor in Florida. Sorry,
Yeah,
and none of I mean, what I was just like, why are you? And he's like, oh, I'm visiting all the totalitarian states. Well, then go back to California where they take children away from their parents
exactly,
because the parents
exactly.
confirm their gender
I
immediately.
literally, I made, there was a time where I did a series of videos on TikTok about Gavin Newsom and the hypocrisy and just the misinformation that he spouts about Florida is unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't understand his obsession. I mean, he can move here if he wants to, but I don't think he'll be happy. So,
I mean, he described. I think he visited the schools in Florida, and he described this dystopian like environment where everybody has duct tape over their mouths and is oppressed. And really, it's really just that there's an absence of blue haired they them teachers. But I guess to
right.
a lefty, that is dystopian to them to not have.
Yeah. It seemed like I think schools are out of control compared to when I went to school.
Oh
But
yeah,
if he thinks public schools now are overly authoritarian or dystopian, I can imagine what California schools are like
by the way,
because
I just want to say, so I went to high school. I graduated in 2014, and so pretty recent. At my high school, we had a girl, and I'm not going to name anybody, obviously. She
Mhm.
strangled a teacher, and when I say strangled, I mean the teacher asked for her. This is a true story. The teacher asked for her hall pass, and
Oh,
and she jumped on the teacher and wrapped her hands around the teacher's throat and left handprints, like hand bruise marks on her neck, and she got a 3-day suspension and no arrest. It's the most ridiculous. So, and this is and we're in a blue area. We also had, I don't know if you had senior prank day. When you went
yeah,
to high school, when you graduated in 2010, I'm not,
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm not sure if you had that, but we had senior prank day, and you'd think
Mhm.
pranking would be like what you put a whoopee cushion on the teacher's chair.
Yeah.
We had a bleach water balloon fight at my school. People filled water balloons with bleach and threw them at people, and people got acid burns on their face. This was out of control. And this was a blue. I live in a really blue area, and it was nuts.
Appropriate?
Probably sounds like Gavin Newsom's. It sounds like Gavin Newsom's idea of heaven, though, doesn't it?
Yes,
Just
it does.
total anarchy.
High school back in none of your damn business. And if we had done any of that, oh my God, absolutely.
And you
Not
know
to
what? This is
mention,
why I'll tell you. This is why I can't be a libertarian because I think too much freedom is a bad thing. This is what happens when you
the
have too much freedom.
you got to have a little bit of rule of
A
law.
little
You got
bit.
to have. So, side note, and then we're going to go into our interview. But I
Yeah.
think one of the best, I don't know if you've ever watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Okay, so there's an episode where they do, and I think it's one of the best. Like if I were in high school, I would get, and like if I taught high school, I would try to get parents to let their kids watch this episode where where Dee and Charlie decide that you have to have the rule of law. So they're kind of like the conservatives, right? And then the Charlie and not Charlie, Dennis and Frank and Mac all decide the bar is going to be completely free. There's going to be no rules at all. Everybody can do what they want. And it is the biggest mess and one of the most hilarious episodes that shows how there has to be some
You
balance.
need
The
law and
O'Pool,
order. You need law and order.
yeah, the O'Pool show up. Frank is doing a gambling thing in the basement that's like the Deer Hunter with Russian roulette.
Yeah,
It
I've seen
is,
this. It's a
yes.
safe haven from that's immune from the law. I remember there was one of the early seasons, I think.
And then it turned into Washington State because there were heroin addicts passing out in the bar. There,
Yes.
there. At first it was great, right? But then there were heroin addicts in the bar. The O'Pool showed up and stabbed Charlie, and it was just a mess. And so, yeah, that is to me. I'm like that explains why there is a need for law and order. As silly as that show is, that
Yeah.
was a brilliant episode. So I would
Well, that
recommend
shows
every.
there's actually a lot of good lessons in that show about what not
Yes,
to do and about how things taken to an extreme are bad. I'd actually argue
yes,
there's some good morals
I think
that
there
come out
is.
of the immoral behavior. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, there is. There is some really that show to me is very clever in many ways. But that one in particular always stood out to me because I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, that's and now it's funny because that show, I think that was in the first two or three seasons.
Yeah.
And you look at the bar, California is literally Patty's Pub now. And so
Absolutely.
is Washington State. It's
Absolutely.
literally those two. It's like yeah, I'm like, this is exactly the same.
100%.
So, but yeah, I would recommend that. All right, Chris, you know what it's time for? It's time for
Yes.
10 questions with Terry.
You're gonna dig up all my past and air out all my dirty laundry. I'm ready.
Balloon fights, your strangling of teachers, your marriage. You weren't in Missouri, you had 12 on your eHarmony. It should have been 14. Or California. If you were in California, they don't care. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, first question. How long have you been on TikTok and why did you decide to get started there?
So I've been on TikTok since April of this year. So I'm a pretty new addition to TikTok. And I got started because so I've been, and you'll get into this later, but um,
Mhm.
as my views started to change and I realized that I think I wanted to use my voice in an impactful way that can't get through just on a one-to-one level with people. I wanted to make sure that because I felt I had a unique perspective too. I um, I haven't always been a conservative, and I think the people I associate with, especially the woman I married, we kind of go against the grain in terms of how people view conservatives, and I wanted to expose people to a new perspective like that.
I think it's. I also think for me, and we met on TikTok and started chatting and everything. Is one, I love the fact that you're willing to share your red pill moment, but also I think it's young. People always view conservatives as these old fuddy duddies, and I love to see people who are younger are figuring out, hey, this
Absolutely.
actually isn't for old blue, not blue haired, but people who are and I think it does bring a great perspective for that. That was one of the reasons I really I can't remember which video I saw, and I was like, how did he used to be,
Absolutely.
liberal? But
People like you and I who are under age 30,
yes, again,
it's
favorite.
it's rare to see. It's rare to see.
Another day on TikTok. So I love your that was a response to one of my arguments. Well, you're the queen of wrinkles. Okay. I don't know what that is to do with what I'm saying, but okay. And but I also think one of the things that really I liked about TikTok, and I think we've talked about this, is there's others out there. Sometimes especially if you're in a liberal state, being conservative, you can feel fairly isolated because Hollywood news, all of that, liberal, 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 and so it's encouraging to hear others.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, to do that. All right, question number two. Um, what was your red pill moment?
So I had two. Do I have time to talk about both?
You do. Yep.
So I first of all, I'll talk about where I started. I'm
Hmm.
raised by I'm adopted from South Korea. My parents are both Democrats.
Let's speak liberal. You were human trafficked.
I was human trafficked by two white colonizers, and they
Okay.
and they
Thank you.
and they adopted me. And I had a great family. Not past tense. I have a great family. My parents are wonderful. They're Democrats. They vote Democrats still. They've actually been very receptive once I changed my views to having conversations with me. I don't think they'll ever cross party lines, but um, they definitely are not woke, and they. I mean, I think maybe to like a really conservative person, they would sound relatively woke, but they don't embrace all this pronoun nonsense.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I was always to the left of them through high
Mm-hmm.
school, and I viewed them as and they were a lot older than me because they adopted me when they were in their early 40s. So right now they're in their late 60s, and I always viewed them as like, oh, they're too moderate. You have to be progressive, and I was that annoying guy that wrote annoying Facebook statuses pretty much through age 18 to 20ish. And
Mm-hmm.
I had two red pill moments where
Mm-hmm.
I saw, because I always considered myself a feminist and I always considered myself anti-racist. I never quite got into the BLM stuff, but I'll talk about that in a minute. But those were
Mm-hmm.
the two things that really shaped my worldview. Um, Both of those came crashing down. The first in kind of 2016, 2017, and the second in 2020. And when I saw these things kind of crash down and burst into flames before my eyes, it made me rethink my position. So the first red pill moment I had was I had a friend who was at a college, and he was a few years older than me, so he was about to graduate when I was entering college, and he had a very tumultuous relationship with his girlfriend, and the girlfriend alleged that he had abused her. And this was a nice guy. This is a gentle guy. Again, maybe you don't always know everything that happens, but this girl had a long history of very erratic behavior with him. So I tend to believe him that he didn't do anything, or that if he did do something, it could have been in self-defense because she would actually show up at his parents' house even though they lived hours away, and she would scream at him
Wow.
through like she was very off the wall.
Yeah.
And she alleged that he had struck her one time, and obviously that what happens is the Title IX investigators, uh, Office of Diversity and Equity for the college, start investigating and talking to people that may know the victim or may know the perpetrator, and they try to get both sides. And when he found out he was being investigated for this, he decided to say, we want to play that game. He tried to submit some evidence of the really emotionally abusive behavior that she had
Right.
perpetrated. And um, lo and behold, these feminists who ran the Office of Diversity and Equity refused to let the testimony of people that he knew into the investigation, even though they were actively seeking the testimony from her side. And it was an extremely one-sided investigation that actually led to his expulsion. And he was one
Wow.
semester from graduation. His parents, and luckily they were very well off, they fought this in court and they spent over $1 million in a civil suit against him. It was extremely
A
expensive, and
million,
they won. They won, but and they
a million,
determined that. Sorry,
$1 million.
yeah, yeah, $1 million, and because I mean they.
You've done that for me. I don't know if your parents could, but if that had happened to me, I'd have just been out of school. I
Yeah, I mean,
mean,
luckily, I mean, he came from. I mean, he was what you people on the left would say was a very, very white privileged family. Um,
mhm,
doesn't really matter, but they had the money, so this didn't bankrupt them because they were very well off, and he's very
mhm.
fortunate of that to have that
Yeah,
because he actually won, and the school had to admit and pay a settlement to him. I'm pretty sure he only just recouped the legal fees. I don't think they actually made money from this, but basically the school was found liable that they had committed sex discrimination against him because he's a male by blocking evidence because he was a male. And I actually got a quote from one of the investigators who said they couldn't imagine a male being a victim of abuse, and they actually said this, and it was very damning deposition that was used against these investigators. So yeah, go ahead.
amazing about that. Two things real quick is one, the CDC's latest release on domestic violence says that that actual victims where a spouse or a significant other has struck a partner, that 51% of the time men are on the receiving end.
No, I believe
So,
that. I was actually watching Jordan Peterson talk about this, and he was saying that because women know, they must inherently know that their force is less lethal than a
mhm,
male's. um, they just get away with it more because it's not actually damaging the male physically the way it would.
Yeah. If you, yeah,
I still
if
think
you
the behavior is wrong, and I will absolutely say that, but it's true.
anybody, but I remember my sister said, if you don't know the difference between a man and a woman, I'll punch you in the face and let my husband punch you in the face and see how big of a difference there is. And that's true. Women have
Yes.
a hard time leaving marks on men, especially if he's bigger than you. The other thing that frustrates me about colleges, and I hate this, is why aren't the police investigating this if it's a crime? Right? If somebody hits you, that's assault. Why is a bunch of college investigators investigating any of this? Is the same
Yep.
thing with sexual assault on
Yep.
campus. Oh, the campus is going to invest a bunch of security guards? No, a bunch of people with an agenda. I don't understand why college campuses get an exemption either way.
So what
If
I'd
it's
like So I'll actually speak to this because I was close with this family, so I heard a lot about it. And again, I'm not going to name or implicate anybody, but um, it's a very and I my if I were in politics or I could rewrite the way things are done, I would say that if somebody does something to somebody on campus, it should be campus police only that investigate. I don't think there should be a tandem investigation because what can actually happen on a college campus is that you can be deemed guilty by a preponderance of evidence at the school and
Mhm.
be expelled, and you could at the same time go to a jury trial and be acquitted in the court. So you can be guilty and not guilty in two systems of the process at the same
Yeah,
time. And I think,
I get it. I think when it comes to crimes like serious crimes like murder or sexual assault, I don't where are you getting DNA, right?
yeah,
Or at least have a mechanism to say, um, we're going to try them on campus and then we'll hand it off to the police.
I think the problem
But
is schools don't have to do beyond a reasonable doubt because it's
right,
civil. They only have to show that it's more likely than not that something occurred, but then that person, could lose everything in terms of a career if they're expelled from school because
yeah,
circumstantially or just because one side has more witnesses that are willing to vouch for one person than the other. It
mhm,
doesn't necessarily mean there's any hard proof that anybody did anything. And I think that's wrong.
right,
So basically, what I saw this guy, and I always considered myself a feminist, and I saw, wow, look what today's feminists are doing to somebody that
yeah,
I believe is innocent. And again, maybe
mhm.
you out there are more skeptical, whoever's watching this, but I believed he was innocent. I knew this
Well,
guy
I
since
was
he was a
if you
child.
didn't listen to the other side.
Exactly, exactly. So I was seeing, wow, look what feminism is being used to justify such horrifically unjust treatment. So that was my first red pill moment. My second red pill moment came during the BLM nonsense after the George Floyd shooting. And
Oh my God, please don't tell me you didn't put a black square on your
so
Instagram.
I'm gonna actually put my right hand up to the Almighty, and I promise, I never, even when I was a lib, I never posted a black square. That's something I'm really happy I didn't do.
So that's how you proved you weren't racist. I mean, I know I've been trying to prove I'm not racist by respecting people and treating everybody the same. But a black square says a lot more than how you treat people.
See,
Wow,
this whole
Chris, I'm
time
disappointed.
and I think I said this before to you in private. You could have done a lifetime of service to fight racism by posting that black square. Instead, you went the
Yeah,
long hard way, and
yeah, treating people equally, standing
foolish.
up so that they're not bullied, being respectful to everybody. And all I needed was a black. I'm going to get a tattoo right here, just a little black square. And that way, I think we should all do it. And that way, if somebody's like, you're racist, I just hold up my hair and go, what do you think?
While shouting
Oh,
the N word, right?
yeah.
Here's my
Like,
black square. Anyway, so I saw,
what do you think? Yeah.
so I saw this. I had this other friend, and he had made a Snapchat story that was only visible to his friends, and he had done this back in 2017 when he was still in high school, and this guy's
Mhm.
younger than me, and it was a joke. I'm not going to repeat it, but it was a joke he shouldn't have made, and it was not respectful, and it came off racist, and it was. But this guy actually, what a lot of people don't know about this friend of mine, he actually got disciplined at school because he actually pushed a guy who was saying the N word, and he was so upset hearing the N word said. So this guy was not a racist at heart. He was not,
Right.
and he most of his friends were minorities. And not that that means you're not racist, but this guy is not racist, and you'll
Right.
just have to take my word for it, even though I'm a white supremacist. And
Yeah, I don't know how good of a judge of character you are. No black square and,
so
white supremacist. But okay.
so this one guy, and they had a falling out. This it was a black guy who knew him at the time, and they had a falling out for reasons unrelated to race. And right after these riots were happening in the wake of George Floyd, this guy who has a fairly large social media following posted the video that he had saved for like 3 years from Snapchat and said and wrote in a caption, "So insensitive for him to say this right after the George Floyd killing." So basically, he lied and said that it was a video that
Yeah.
he recorded really recently, and then he published the guy's phone number and home address and
Oh
said,
my God.
"Have at it." He wrote "have at it" to his followers. And this guy got for 3 days got phone calls from all 50 states, text messages, including he got phone calls from area codes even in Brazil. Like these were even international. This
Holy
went all
crap.
over the place.
Yeah, it
And
blows up. Yeah.
yeah, and the messages that he got, he was told that if we see you outside, we're gonna kill you. You better not come out of your house. They said he got messages that said that they were gonna come and rape his mother and grandmother, if and that they had their information, and if we see your grandmother walking, we're gonna beat her up and rape her. Like these are the
Holy
most
crap.
horrific things. They also called his place of work. They told him that if they told his boss, if you don't fire him, we're gonna firebomb uh, your building, and he got fired from his job. They tried to get him expelled from school, even though this video happened well before he was in college. He was in college at the
Hmm.
time, and the school apparently actually had an internal deliberation about what to do about him because they were getting threats from these people, even though this had nothing to do with anything academic and it was before he attended the school. So this was the second time I saw a liberal force that I would have, even though I never posted a black square, I still would tell people I think Black Lives Matter. And I saw a second major cultural movement that I thought I was behind acting in such a despicable way. And
Destroying a person.
I think, and then I realized the people opposing this seemed a lot more reasonable than the people doing this, and so I decided to look into other positions, whether they be economic issues or just other constitutional issues. And I slowly realized, I'm not for this. I'm not on
Right.
this. Whatever's on the other side of this, that's what I am. And I learned more
Yeah.
about the other Republican and conservative positions and realized many of them I agree with. And
Uh-huh.
that's my journey.
And I don't know if it's me because I grew up in a conservative household. It's funny though, I'm more conservative than both my parents are because I'm a constitutional purist and they aren't
Yes.
necessarily. They believe in the Constitution, but they have way I'm like, this is what it says, this is what we do. I'm very, stick to the Constitution. But
So you really
one of
are
the
like
things
Scalia in that way.
yes, I
Yeah.
am. He's oh, I love him. I fangirl out over Scalia. Um One of the things though for me, and I've seen this shift, right? Used to I didn't see it, but one of the things I've seen changed in the conservative movement is one of the guys referred to it, our tent has gotten much bigger in that we're willing to allow different viewpoints. And I know one of the things, and we're not going to discuss it here, but I know our stances on abortion are different. But I respect that we have the right to have those different stances. And I have found more conservatives disagreeing on the abortion law, not Roe v. Wade, because that's a states' rights issue, but as far
And by
as
the way,
time
I also
limits.
think our disagreement is more on legality, not on whether we
Yes,
how we feel about abortion. So,
right. It might.
yeah.
I don't think. I think it's you're not. I don't have to call. We don't have to call each other murderers or forced birthers or any. It's let's sit down and talk about the legality of this and where we see it. And I found that the conservative tent, the Republican tent, has grown to accommodate more ideas. And that one of the things, used to, if you were going to be on the right side of the aisle, you were against abortion, you were pro death penalty, believed in going to war. And I found that as I talk to people, they're like, well, I don't necessarily, there's a spectrum. There's a word, spectrum.
Ooh,
I'm,
can't use that word.
he on how they feel about this, and I have changed my perspective on those things over the years. And so it's funny to me because I talk to people who are on the right side of the aisle or who are more centrist, and they tell me the same thing. And from what you've said is, you know, nobody on the right calls me names and gets mad at me because I disagree with them. Whereas on the left, I'm the most horrible person. And I don't know if you saw the state congresswoman in Georgia who changed parties, but the
Yes. Oh
emails
yeah.
is such.
Oh yeah.
I would never, if you have not seen it, folks, go on TikTok and search for it. Never in my life have I even thought of those words, let alone would call someone those things and send it to them. It
I mean,
is
I mean, I would
horrific.
have to be scheming. What is the most cold-hearted, horrible thing I could say to somebody? I would not, even in my maddest moments, those
Yeah.
statements wouldn't come to mind for me.
And it's over because, and we're going to talk about this on an episode, but school choice. Because she believes school choice was better for her district,
Right.
which had failing schools, than sticking to what they had. And the Democrats were not supporting her. She didn't feel it was best for her constituents. So she changed parties. And you would think she sacrificed, I'm not going to say a baby because that one, the left would have been okay with that, I think. But you would have think she misgendered someone. That's how horrible they're treating
Yeah.
her. You would have think,
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, this poor woman. And I'm just like, who thinks to say these things to people? Because they switch parties, which you're allowed to do in this country. So, all right, next question. Thank you for sharing your red pill moment. I
Of
love
course.
I love to hear those moments from
I
people.
love hearing myself speak, so.
Well, of course you do. So, I mean, all conservatives are narcissists. So, I'm sure you do. All right, your presidential pick and your vice presidential pick, your dream ticket. Who would you pick?
Are you talking about out of the current crop or anybody in history?
Out of the current crop.
Oh boy, I don't want to say the wrong thing and alienate my own
We
viewers.
know that you are a MAGA cult conservative. No.
Okay. Um I'm a policy wonk. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't really I like the showmanship of primaries and the debates, but at the end of
Uh-huh.
the day, it's actually not showmanship and charisma that I vote based on. Um,
Uh-huh.
I like efficiency and I like a proven legislative record. And
Uh-huh.
I would say right now, because this could change, it's really early in the race right now.
Oh yeah.
I like, and I have two picks. I like Ron DeSantis with a Vivek as VP, or I like Ron DeSantis with Tim Scott as a VP.
I like that. Yeah.
Those are my two picks, and that could change. And you know, just because I know there's some people who get a little bit butthurt about criticizing Trump, I like Trump. I'm gonna vote for Trump because
Hmm.
he will be the nominee. I just want to put that out there. But those would be
Yeah.
my choices right now.
Yeah. You make your choice. Yeah. I look. I'm going to vote for. I'm not voting for Biden. And you could
You're not?
run a. I'm going to tell you how I feel about Biden. The Republicans could literally run a bowl of dog shit, and I would vote for that for Biden. I'd be like, well, it can't be any worse. Let's go for it with a side of cat litter, and I'd be like, I think it's a step up from AI's two words. So that's how. But I don't feel as strongly about a candidate on the Republican side. I think it's early. So but I do like the people you listed. I like Vivek. I think he's very I think he's smart. He's young. To me, he's like a breath of fresh air in politics. I really
Absolutely.
like him. So,
He's
and
10 or
I
12.
agree
He's
with
10 or 12 years older than you, I think. So,
yeah, oh, he is, yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think DeSantis is such a good policy guy and he gets things done. My worry for him in a national election is he has all the charisma of this pen.
I know.
And while
I know, and I
I
wish it wasn't so.
Yeah, and while I don't think that matters because I'm you, I can listen to Supreme Court recordings. That's going to be a problem. DeSantis doesn't excite people the way that Trump does, but I think Vivek can.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
so if you paired DeSantis with somebody who had some charisma, and like I said, he was born in Jacksonville, so I'd get a president from my home city.
I mean,
But
I think, I think DeSantis is such uh an efficient executive, and that's what I like about him. And I think
Hmm.
if you paired him with one of the more upbeat, charismatic candidates, and that's why I said Vivek um, or Tim Scott, because I think both are kind of these inspirational toned people
Yep.
that they almost I think Tim Scott almost sounds like a conservative Obama. I think he's that hope and change type of candidate, and his
Yeah.
vibe is very upbeat. He's not a doom and gloom
You know what I love
candidate.
about Tim? He's a regular guy. He's
Yeah,
not the ultra elite. He runs an insurance company. He's a citizen. He's a regular guy to me, and I like that. I have, since I think Reagan was the last one, but it's always they have to go to Harvard, you have to go to Yale, you have to do all this, and it's so removed from your average citizen. And Tim Scott owns an insurance business and has been a businessman and lived in the real world, and I
well,
like that.
the one thing I'll say about all three of those individuals, DeSantis, Scott, and Vivek, all of them had humble beginnings. None of them were born with a
Yeah.
lot. I think
Yep.
DeSantis's parents were, or his father was one of those Nielsen television box
Yep.
people. He was very
Dollar.
blue
Yep.
collar. Vivek is the son of immigrants, and Tim Scott was raised by a single mother in poverty. So it
Yep.
doesn't get more humble than that in terms of your
Yep.
upbringing. Nobody can say
It,
that they're
yep.
that they're.
And they're men who work.
Yep,
Yeah, I really like that about them. There's no privilege there. These are guys who came up the hard way. All
absolutely.
right, your number one election issue you want to hear people talk about.
This is a little bit of an umbrella issue, but I feel very, very passionately about the First Amendment, freedom of
Mhm.
speech, and fighting against censorship. Um, and
Yeah, that's a
also,
big one.
and I think a second one, and this is why I do like Tim Scott, is dispelling these horrible racial oppression narratives.
Hmm.
I think it's horrible, and I think it hurts minorities. And I've talked about this before in my own show. I think it's extremely damaging to young minorities who they're growing up with their first things being implanted in their head is that they're oppressed and can't get ahead. And I think it's so horrible.
You're the
Um,
sense of a human being.
exactly, and I don't know a lot about what policies you can pass, but I think somebody who embodies, and I think Tim Scott puts it best. He says, "My life disproves the left's lies." And I think
Hmm.
that's beautiful. And I'd love to have somebody like that, or Vivek being a spokesperson on the national stage,
Yeah,
that this is not true. These things you're
yeah.
hearing
I
are not true.
Tim Scott's positivity is just something I love. I
Yeah,
love his positivity. I really, and he handled the View well. He handled others well, and I think that's such a hard. Why would you tell people they can't succeed?
yeah,
I hate that. I do. So and I agree with you. The First Amendment one is big because once they chip away at that, to me, all is lost. It's just a matter of time,
absolutely.
before we do become the dystopian world that Gavin Newsom thinks Florida is.
And I know there are other issues that are very important to conservatives, such as abortion or the Second Amendment. But I'm a believer that if you don't have freedom of speech, you cannot fight
No,
those other issues. You cannot make
you cannot.
headway on any of those
Yep.
other issues in terms of changing the culture and changing people's minds if you don't have if you don't have freedom of speech.
Yes. Without speech, all is lost because there's only
Absolutely,
one voice, and that's the voice that's heard. And we're already battling that in so many ways.
100%.
Um, okay, if you have advice, quick advice, conservatives and leftists, what advice would you give each side?
For conservatives, and I'm sure we'll touch back on this because we're going to talk about this later. Um, I, I think, and again, I'm not a Trump hater. I'm a Trump fan, but
Mm-hmm.
the blind allegiance to Trump and I think the losing of objectivity about
Mm-hmm.
the events surrounding Trump is detrimental because I think we do a lot of schooling of the left and we say,
Yep.
you have to read good sources and you have to have your facts, only, have logic, think of things reasonably, be rational. But then I think I see people lose rationality with Trump, and because
Yep.
it's true, he's been incredibly persecuted in such unfair ways, but um, I think Trump is in some ways a shady guy. He gets shit for things he deserves and things he doesn't. That's my opinion of Trump. And
Yep.
I think when we say that he's a squeaky clean guy that can do no wrong, I think it puts a big hole in our ability
Mm-hmm.
to say that we shouldn't worship Bernie Sanders or we shouldn't worship whoever's on the left
Yeah,
because we kind of do the same thing. And so that's what I would say to conservatives. Um,
I agree. That's fair.
I would say and again, actually, we'll revisit it when we talk about it. But for leftists, I would say when you hear an argument or a statement you don't like, um, consider the statement itself before you assume the intent behind it, because you hear a lot of times that statements that they think our statements are motivated by hate. A
Yeah.
lot of times it couldn't be further from the truth, and I would love if they
Jason,
could just, they could
yeah,
think we're 100% wrong. We're not wrong, but they could think we're 100% wrong. But we can have a discussion if you address the words we say and not assume intent or bad character.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's the case. You're looking at the Jason Aldean song now about try that in a small town. And I'm astounded. I'm like, there's a lot of assumption here that's not in this song, you
Absolutely.
know? And yeah, it's kind of crazy. All right, good advice for both. I doubt anybody will follow it, but all right, what is one place if somebody has to go anywhere in the world? You don't even have to have been there, but you want to go. What is one place everyone should have to go in their life?
Oh boy, I didn't prepare on this one. Um, say that it's one place that
One
say
place
it again.
everybody should visit.
One place everybody should visit. So it's not one place I would visit. It's one place anybody should visit.
Well, if you're like, I would go here, and I think everybody should try it. That's fine. But one place everybody would visit.
I'm going to be a little bit broad, and I'm not going to say a
Okay.
specific place, but I think everybody should visit wherever you are in the world, a
Hmm.
country that runs completely different from the way you think your country should be run. Even if it's just a vacation for a few days, I think it's
Hmm.
important to see. And I know you mentioned you've been to communist China before, and I
Yep.
actually am basing my answer partly off of that. I think it's important for everybody to see, especially if you're one of those people that idolizes um, the way Scandinavia does their
Hmm.
healthcare. I think you should um, purposely get some kind of chronic medical illness and then experience the healthcare there for yourself. And
Yep.
and then decide. Maybe you like it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You may go there and think it's, I'm like, I know I don't want to live in a communist country. I've been to one. If you think it's great, then I think you should visit North Korea or Venezuela or China, and you may love it. It may be for you. It's not for me. That's why it's not for me.
Yes, but I think
Um,
it's important
so
that we experience things that we can say with real life
yeah.
experience. This is or isn't for me.
Mhm.
Don't not
Yeah,
just talking and talking our asses off about it.
exactly. That's good advice. I like that. All right. What is one thing everybody should eat in their lifetime?
Uh, A5 Japanese Wagyu beef,
I agree with that 100%, at least once,
at least
and
one.
make sure it's perfection. Yes, I agree with
Exactly.
you on that one.
No
What's your
well
favorite?
done.
Okay, you've triggered me. Talking about beef well done, I'm triggered. I don't know if you ever watched King of the Hill, but one of my best
Mhm.
ones is Hank Hill was cooking steaks, and he said, "And Bobby, that's how you know a steak is perfectly medium rare." And his son goes, "Well, what if they want it well done?" He goes, "Then you politely but firmly ask them to leave."
Yeah, that's
That's
my mentality exactly.
I'm sorry, you want to do what to this cat? No. No, no, no. Oh, yeah. Not well done. No. Favorite holiday?
Um, I would have to say, I actually, it's cliche, I'd have to say Christmas because I think it's, and I know Christmas has become so commercialized and secular, but I actually think, there's still a lot of people, even if they observe it secularly, they're getting to spend
Mhm.
time with family and with loved ones. It's an excuse for them to do that. Even if they're not true Christians and observing it in a religious way, how is it a negative thing that they're finding an excuse to get together and be happy? I think that's a good thing.
You spend time with family. I think that, yeah. Two more. What is your guilty pleasure that you can share publicly? Let's just, you know.
Oh boy. Um. Oh, guilty pleasure. Let's see. I hold on. I'm gonna pause and do another take because I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'll cut it out. Don't worry.
Okay.
Actually, can you ask the question again?
All right, Chris. What is your guilty pleasure? One that you can share publicly that won't get you rated.
um. A guilty pleasure. I'm a big musical theater buff, and I know there's not a lot of conservatives who are into musical theater, but I love singing show tunes from the 80s. I'm big into Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis. This is actually true. On my personal YouTube, it's full of singing videos. Because I'm a tenor
Uh,
and I actually sing.
well, I would like a theme song for my show then.
Oh boy. I don't compose music though. But I could
Ch-
sing the
challenge yourself. That's all I'm
No,
saying.
but it's true. I'm a musical theater guy. I'm not into like the recent stuff. A lot of people
Yeah.
who I talk to who say they love theater, they only can name shows that came out in the last 2 years. But I'm kind
Mhm.
of big into 80s Broadway.
There are two. I am not a music. I don't like musical theater. I don't like musical movies. There are two musical movies I watch. One is Fiddler on the Roof because for some reason I believe people in Russia probably did burst into song around the turn of the last century. I don't know why. And the other one is Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet
Ah,
Street,
Sweeney
because
Todd.
yes, because when people burst into song, I too want to slit their throat. So I get where he's coming from. So those
I
are the
can't
only
I
two.
I can't tell if you actually like Sweeney Todd or if you use that as a joke punchline.
No, I actually did like this. I do like Sweeney Todd.
Okay.
I think that's a fascinating story. I actually did a lot of research on the rumors and where that came from, and was it really a true story, and where did this come from? So
By the way,
I do like.
my favorite musical is actually Les Mis because I love the music, but I love the message too. It's a movie. It's a
Yeah.
story about redemption and how
Mhm.
somebody's past doesn't have to define their future, and as long as they make good moral decisions that help and benefit the lives of others, that you can achieve redemption no matter your past. So I actually think that's a very good message. It's a very Judeo-Christian message as well,
Yep.
and I enjoy. That's my favorite.
That's your favorite one. Yeah, I'm not and my parents were big musical people, so we watched all the great 50s musicals. They took us to plays, and I was just like, I am not interested in this. So, but
And that's
everybody else on
okay.
my so, but I am going to watch your videos and make comments. So prepare yourself. All right, and the last question for you, Chris, of the 10 question is, what is an unusual fact that you know that most people don't?
I should have studied before I did this. An unusual fact. Okay, I'm gonna say
Mhm.
this. This is not an unusual fact, but this is more
Okay,
of a fact that a lot of people seem to not know, and it pisses me off. I'm the son of
okay,
doctors.
we'll take it.
You cannot get a cold from being in the cold, and if you think you can, you're wrong. People's
Well,
nose runs.
see, my grandmother would totally disagree with you. You can get a cold from having wet hair in the winter.
No, so everybody thinks it's because your nose runs in the cold, and it's
Hmm.
because something with the temperature actually does trigger the membranes in your
Hmm.
nasal cavity, so your nose runs, but you are not sick. You may be blowing
Oh,
your nose afterwards, but you're not
but you're not.
sick, and you're not going to catch something from the cold.
Sounds sus. Sounds sus. That's not what my
Well,
grandmother
I'm
said.
right, and I'm always right. That's the name of my
Oh,
channel. So
okay. All right. Don't. Oh, the old lefty's coming out. So just telling my grandmother was not about it. All right. Chris, you've agreed to stay and help me do the interpretation. It's now time for the
absolutely,
10 hat
here
of
we go.
TikTok. All right, let's put on our hats so that we can. Oh, you don't have antennas. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick anything up,
I'll
but
see.
we'll
I'll try
see.
to move this
All right.
around. I'll move this around and make sure it's getting
Yeah,
service.
try and get.
Okay.
Okay. So now we're going to put on these 10 hats because, unfortunately, sometimes we don't understand the other side. And I think 10 hats will help us pick up on the message that are coming. So we're going to watch a video from TikTok with our 10 hats on and see if we can understand and then share with our fellow conservatives or centrists what's going on here.
Got it.
So,
Let's go
are you
for it.
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Well, I have this thing, call it a little quirk if you will. I have hair in my armpits. I have it there for a few reasons. One, lazy. Two, fuck the patriarchy. And three, your response to them tells me everything I need to know about you.
All right, Chris, did you get anything in with your 10 hat?
So I
My
think
antennas,
so.
I need high antennas for this.
So I heard "fuck the patriarchy," and my thought is,
Mm-hmm.
she hates. men so much that she wants to repulse them so much that none of them will come near her. I think it's pretty
Here's
simple.
okay. Well, that's what you got. I don't know. Maybe my tin hat didn't work correctly, but here is my thought. Why does she think anybody's going to notice her armpits over her haircut? That's what I'm wondering.
That's a good point. That's a really good
Because
point.
the first thing I'm looking at is you have half your head shaved and you have sideburns, and you think you need hairy pits to ward off men. I'm so distracted by the haircut. I can't. I'm just like, what is happening here? And yeah, I don't know. I first of all, I don't know why not shaving your pits has anything to do with the patriarchy. I know men prefer women with shaved pits. I also prefer that. But men were not the ones who made women do that. That actually comes from prostitutes decided to do that because they could make more money.
By the way,
Um,
what is by the way, to a modern liberal, what is the
mhm.
patriarchy? Are women who wake up one day and say that they're men, are they part of the patriarchy?
I don't I don't know. Are
I'd
they?
actually love that. I'd actually love, in all seriousness, to ask somebody that.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah. Do you become part of the Are you now part of the problem? And why would you want to become part of the problem? I think you agree. I don't know. She says it tells you everything you need to know about somebody. The only thing I think it tells you is where your level of hygiene is in the world. I know that inherently having hairy armpits is not unhygienic. Um, but it kind of is, I guess. I just feel like as a woman who grew up old school female, yeah, no, I
By the
don't
way,
like it.
I know why she has no hair. I don't think it's because she shaved. I think it's because
Okay,
she eats a very unhealthy vegan diet. She has no nutrients. She gets no nutrients from it, and so her
that's
hair
it.
fell out.
But the sideburn state. I
Ah,
don't know
you're
many.
right.
I don't know many men who are like, the only reason I'm single is I can't find a bald woman with sideburns and hairy armpits. She's all F the patriarchy, so who cares? I don't think. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I also don't know a lot of lesbians who are like, the only reason I'm single is I can't find a bald woman with sideburns and hairy armpits. I'm not sure it
Yeah, because
matters either way.
most lesbians are trying to find that they're attracted to women supposedly, right? So they want to find somebody that at least resembles a woman. I would think.
They're attracted to non-men. Okay, we've gone over this. You've seen the TikTok video.
Oh, that's true. That's
Lesbians are
true.
two non-men
I think this thing
who,
wasn't receiving accurately, so I messed up the definition a little bit.
yeah, you totally messed up the definition. So, okay, we can remove our tin hats now. We have
Whew.
tried to interpret that. I think we did the best we could. I think I need longer antennas, maybe a Viking shape thing. And the other advantage is it protects you from like you being like, Nicole, grow out your armpits, and me being like cutting off my hair and gluing it on there. So it's twofold. Twofold.
By the way,
Communication.
I don't know if 12-year-olds can grow that much hair on their armpits. So
Well, it didn't matter in California. So
that's true.
don't worry
That's
about it. I
true.
mean, you can always shave off your goatee and super glue. So there you go. You're good to go. All right, it's time for our last segment. That is our conservative clamor, and that is where I talk about some of the frustrations with the conservatives and things we could do a little bit better. And I'm going to circle back to your topic of please stop criticizing all of our candidates. You don't know who's going to be the nominee. It's assumed it's Trump, but he's got a lot going on, and I think the Democrats are desperately trying to make sure he cannot run for president. All they have to do is convict him of one thing and he can't run, right?
And by the way,
So,
criticism is okay. I'm actually going to push back and say
yeah,
criticism's okay, but blind bashing
yes,
on a character and kind of all encompassing level is what I have a problem with. I don't mind if you want to
I agree.
criticize somebody's positions or criticize their electability. That's fine. I have no problem
Fair.
with that.
That's absolutely fair. But this thing of pitting everybody against each other, let's stop. That's something that the left would love to see. And they're having their own internal struggles because there's apparently legitimate people looking to bring in a third party candidate, right?
Yeah.
And so they're already going to have their internal fight. We need to stick together. We need to look at policy, like you said, not charisma, which can be hard, but stop tearing down DeSantis as this Soros-backed guy who, is disloyal to Trump. Comment on his policies and give him feedback. But
And
if
I
you
will
are bashing,
And I will say the whole Soros thing for DeSantis, it's based off of a out of context clip where Soros says
yeah,
he thinks DeSantis is less dangerous for the country than Trump. And somehow that
yeah,
got twisted into
yeah,
Soros is funding him, and that makes no sense. I also think, and I hate when this happens, there are rhinos that exist. I've talked about this on my TikTok, but when you say
hmm
everybody that isn't perfect for you, and sadly, I
yeah,
think it's a lot of times if you're not a Trump loyalist, you're a rhino. I don't think
yeah.
that's true.
No, it's not true. Yeah,
But I do think the word rhino is thrown around. It's like when people say racist or
yeah,
transphobic on the left. It's
yes.
losing its meaning and it's becoming just anybody who you don't love and worship on the right. And I think that's one of
hmm
the big things. I think because when you say somebody's a rhino, which is Republican in name only, you're saying they're
Yeah,
actually you're questioning the integrity of their positions. Now, I think there are absolutely some rhinos who are beholden to all these different things in the Senate and who are in politics, and I don't dispute that. But to say that somebody who might have some of the most consistently conservative legislation in the country right now,
hmm
who's running, and you're going to say he's a rhino and that he's like George Bush or something is totally outrageous.
DeSantis is
I
a
mean,
rhino.
I hear people say that DeSantis and Romney are the same, and it's like on what planet?
No,
On what
no.
planet?
On what planet? But if you want to disagree with DeSantis's policy, that's fine.
Yeah,
But stop personally attacking him because at some point he may be the nominee and we're going to have to sell him to people. And he needs help because
and
unfortunately
he
the man
may
is
be the nominee in 28, even if he's not this
exactly.
time.
He could be the nominee in 28. The same with Tim Scott or any of the others. So if you want to say I don't agree with this particular policy, that's fine. But stop tearing them down personally because you are going to make it harder for us, you know, when
Yep.
the election comes. You can say I
The thing
disagree
is,
with someone's policy.
if DeSantis is a rhino today, he's a rhino in 2028, and
Yeah,
you're going to have to justify why you're throwing your support and knocking on doors to get other Republicans to vote for a rhino.
exactly. When he's not. The man, there's no way that he's a rhino. And so, yeah, so just please stop doing that. My next one is this is for Washington. I know nobody will up there hear it, but maybe someday they will. We have been trying to reform the tax code and the IRS for years. This conversation actually started out. Reagan was the first one who really kicked off about taxes and budget. He changed the whole conversation. So one of the things I'm a big fan of either a flat tax or a national sales tax, right? And the sales tax, of course, would not apply to food, medicine, necessities. But I think it creates a fairness, right? There's no loopholes. You're rich, you buy something, you pay more. You're poor, you don't go out and buy luxury items or buy all these things, you pay less, right? I mean, and there's no auditing, there's no filing, there's none of that. You're going to pay based on what you buy, right? It gives families an opportunity to cut back and save money because then say, you know what, we're not going to go out and buy these extra things now. We're going to stick to non-taxed items, right? And you get to bring home your whole check, right? So you really have control
Yep.
over what you're spending in taxes.
But
What I don't like
Terry,
is that,
that
yeah,
would require a desire for people to be self-responsible. I don't think the left really wants that.
well, no, they don't, but I do. So the Republicans who've been kicking this idea around for years voted it through now in Congress. Oh, we passed it. That's great. You have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic president. Where do you think it's going to go? This is a bunch of BS for show, and it infuriates me that they did not fight to stop the extra tax audits that are going to come in and empowering the IRS, which is going to be used for intimidating citizens, right? But you push through a national sales tax and a reform that's going to go nowhere, and you know it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah,
So I'm very angry with them about that, very frustrated about that. And they've really pissed me off about that. And I would love to vote for somebody else, but dear God, I can't vote for the opposition because it's insanity. So that's
absolutely.
my conservative plan. You get the last word on that.
No, I think you're spot on. And by the way, my roommate just went to bed, so I have to quiet down for a minute. Um,
Uh-huh.
I think that's spot on.
Hold on. My mom's coming in. I'm gonna have to ask you again. Yeah. Yeah. Just leave the light on. I'm gonna come downstairs and should get the puppies and everything.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will, but
Did you take your medicine?
I'll look.
Okay. Make sure to take it. All right. I'll be down a little bit. Just leave the light on for me. Sorry about that. When I come upstairs, she forgets I live here. So she was like, "Who's upstairs?" And then I'm locking up and everything. So that's why. All right. I'm going to ask you the last one again. All right, Chris, that's the conservative clamor. You get the last word on that.
I think you're totally correct on all of that. I think, by the way, I would vote for you. I think that's a great policy
You.
proposal. Um, and you'd be the first president. Uh, what's the cutoff age to be president? 30, 35?
35.
You'd
Be
be
the
the first
first
30.
35-year-old president.
You'd be the first 35-year-old
Chris,
president.
you have to get a constitutional amendment so that I could run.
No, but I think you're spot on. And I love the primary process. I think it's going to be a very interesting process,
Uh-huh.
and I hope people keep an open mind. Um, and I think we have to also remember back in 2015 and 2016 that Trump and Cruz were at each other's throats, and they came
Yeah.
out as buddies in the end, and were very
Uh-huh.
loyal to each other. So I think there's always hope, but um, it's a shame that it has to devolve into that. But I think that's the nature of
Yeah.
primaries. But I hope voters, I think politicians know how to make up. And Trump is a politician. I hate when people say
No, he
he
is.
he is a
Oh,
politician.
100%. He's a showman. He's P.T. Barnum all over again to me. 100%.
Exactly. So I think in Washington people can kiss and make up really easily, but the voters don't as well. And so I
Yep.
just want voters to remember that. And that's
Yep.
my final
So
word.
I want to go ahead and extend an invite back because I know you'll watch it. So the first Republican primary debate is in August. Will you come back and break that down with me when
Oh, absolutely.
after it happens?
Absolutely.
Awesome. That'll be great. Yeah, I would love to have some discussion and see how they did. So, and since you're a policy wonk like I am, that'll be interesting. So that's all I have. The last thing I have is a quote for the day. I like to, and I think this one is particularly relevant. I'm gonna give you a second to change this. So, all right, I'm gonna redo that one. All right, so the last thing we have, Chris, thank you so much for coming on my inaugural show. I hope it was good. I hope everybody enjoyed it. They'll tune back in. I'm going to promote it on TikTok, and I'll be posting some interesting clips, ones that make Chris look bad. So, so I'm going to end with a quote of the day, and I think this quote is so relevant for where we are today, and it's from Philip K. Dick, and it says, "The basic tool for the manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words." And I think with us changing definitions of words and what they mean, and this happening a lot, this is a huge manipulation of our society in an attempt to control people. So I saw that
100%.
and I was like, this is relevant for today. All right, that's
100%.
it for our first episode of Dispelled. We're going to wrap it up. I think we dispelled some myths about the Constitution, about marriage, probably about you, hopefully a little bit about me. And we'll tune in. Everybody tune in next week and hear some more truth. Thanks, everyone.